The war in Iran escalating tensions this week, and there may be a new adversary against the U.S. and Israel, China. CNN reporting the communist nation is preparing to deliver new air defense systems to Iran. So joining me now is retired Marine intelligence officer, host of the Strap podcast, and national security expert, Hal Kempfer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ashley.
So Hal, what does this report mean for keeping the ceasefire?
Well, this acts as a new dynamic. First we had a report that Russia was providing intelligence to Iran that they were using to target U.S. bases and U.S. personnel. Now we have a report that China is actually shipping in weapons, air defense weapons. These are the same type of weapons that were used to shoot down the F-15, where we had to rescue the aircrew from that, and to shoot down the A-10 and a variety of other things. So obviously this poses a direct threat to our forces. This is something I'm sure we're discussing with China, but this goes to the alignment. You got Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Those four are working in sync in things all around the world. So it's not a shock, but it is disappointing.
They also mentioned that China is routing the shipments through other countries to mask their identity. What can you tell us about that, if anything?
China's a master at that. They use shell corporations. The ships that come in can be under third country flags, different shell corporations from around the world. In fact, a lot of times it's not quite the same as the shadow tanker fleet with Russia, but when you start getting into who owns the ship, what country is that ship registered to, the flag country or the flag state for the ship. And then you get into, well, what is actually on the ship? What is the cargo that's on the ship? Who's the master of the vessel? Who's who's in the crew? You start breaking that down, you start finding that there's all sorts of nefarious things going on many times, and that's the case in this, where they're basically using third countries to mask the fact that they are providing all the support for Iran in its war against the U.S. and Israel, and really against all the Gulf states and against the Middle East.
So we know that Vice President J.D. Vance is leading these negotiations in Pakistan and trying to talk with Iran there. But when you hear things like, well, China's going to help out Iran against us, I mean, your mind immediately goes to World War III. Is this concerning that China's coming into this story now?
There have been discussions about this. When this story surfaced, there are a lot of people who see what's going on right now around the world with Ukraine, Russia, with the Middle East, as the beginnings of World War II or World War III, kind of like the turbulent international situation in the 1930s was the beginnings of what eventually became World War II. So there's a lot of people who see that, and when you see great powers, and China definitely falls into the great power context these days, when you see them doing something to support this war, one can go back to the 1930s and find parallels of, for example, Nazi Germany supporting Spain and its civil war and all sorts of other things that went on back in that time period. So I don't know that this is the beginning of World War III, but it certainly adds a high degree of international risk to everything, especially international commerce, the international supply chain. And we're starting to see that, where countries are pulling back and they're trying to gain more control over their own supplies, their own resources, realizing that being reliant on things from overseas, particularly from the Persian Gulf, where the Strait of Hormuz can be cut off, is putting them at great risk and actually posing a risk to their national security.
All right, let's hope these negotiations play out in our favor. Hal, thank you so much for joining us.
Make sure you support independent journalism. Your help is more important than ever. Like, comment, share, and subscribe today.